In this video, I'm going to show you how to establish a daily exercise practice using some simple strategies that you can apply today. First, let's establish our challenge. Many people struggle to get into a regular exercise practice, and that's a real shame because even the best created workout program can't deliver results if you abandon it early because you couldn't get the momentum behind the habits that were needed to see it through. Now, whilst giving up on an individual workout regime may not seem like the biggest deal in the world, is that actually true? Remember that character Beric Dondarrion from Game of Thrones? Although being a great warrior, every time he was resurrected, he came back that little bit weaker. We have to make sure that we don't do the same thing with our will and self-esteem. This is because repeated internal references for failure can dent our self-image and make us more hesitant to take on challenges in the future that might help us maximize our potential, just like a new workout regime. To further compound that, multiple failed attempts at exercise regimes mean that we lose ground on our initial position, and future attempts are often more and more extreme in their nature, making them less likely to be seen through. The good news is,
there's a flip side to that coin.
You see, self-esteem doesn't come from our big life achievements at the end of the rainbow. It comes from frequently keeping appointments that we set with ourselves. And this is essentially following through on the things that we say we're going to do, either to ourselves or other people.
You go back in time 5 years, you meet yourself, what do you say?
If I go back 5 years from now?
Yeah.
Wow, 5 years, 19, so I don't know, just stick with it, you know what I mean? Keep doing what you're doing. It's gonna happen for you.
So in essence then, establishing a regular exercise practice isn't just great for your health, it can become a springboard for change in other areas of life as well. So let's get started. First of all, let's establish what a habit actually is. So the dictionary definition of a habit is a settled or regular practice, especially one that is hard to give up. So that really sums up what we're trying to achieve. At a certain point, exercise won't just be habitual as a habit, it'll actually be so well ingrained that it would become difficult to give up. Let's take a look at some of the common reasons well-intentioned people fail to establish habits. The first reason is really failing to understand how a habit actually works. Once you understand how the habit works and how one is established, it gives you great power to choose which ones you establish and which ones you don't. A habit can be broken down into three main components. So the first part is the cue or trigger. Now this is where some internal or external stimuli trigger a behavior or action. The second part is the action. So this is where you carry out the behavior itself. Remember, this can be good or bad behavior, so it can be a habit that you're trying to form or drop that you see through this lens. The third part is the reward. So this is where your brain receives some kind of reward or not, which we'll look into in a second, for having carried out the behavior. So keep those three components in your mind and we'll put them together through the frame of reference of exercise in just a second. Before we do that, let's take a look at the second challenge you may face when trying to establish your habit. And this is taking on too much or establishing a goal or habit set that is unrealistic for what we're trying to achieve or from our starting position. Now, this is a failure to leverage the right kind of behavior and expectation from habit setting.
When am I gonna learn how to punch?
Learn how to punch. Learn how to keep trying.
No!
Essentially, to establish your goal, you're going to need to broker a deal with yourself. You want to establish habits that are based around exercises that you actually enjoy or have a very small logistical barrier to entry. For example, it wouldn't be a very good idea to set a swimming goal if you hate swimming. Likewise, it might not be a good idea to set a goal of playing tennis on a regular basis because there are too many moving parts that you can't control. If your tennis partner doesn't show up, you don't get to play tennis, and that'll count as a failure or a reference for failure for not seeing your habit through. So make sure that you pick the right activities to start your habit. So I'm going to offer two easy exercise options that you can use to get started with an exercise habit. The first one is just going to be a 10-minute walk around your local area, and the second would be a 10-minute mobility practice that you could do in your own front room. As a quick aside, before we go through the process of setting up our habits, I think there's one powerful psychological principle that you could use that could be the difference between seeing through an exercise regime or not when times get tough. You see, the power of motivation is quite easily overestimated. I mean, you have the motivation to get in shape or improve your health because otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. But what tends to happen when you don't see the exercise habit is that motivation comes and goes. It's very ephemeral and can change on a daily basis. One solution to that is to really dive down into the emotions of why you want to achieve your goal. So you would do this visually, actually visualize what the achievement of your goal is going to mean to you. Are you going to feel different? Are you going to look different? Are you going to be able to do certain things again or do certain things for longer? Really play out almost like a visualization in your mind. Who are you going to be on the other side of the goal? Try to get those emotions, really feel it through. Think it through and feel it through and try to anchor those emotions. Try to get those emotions stored, and you'll be able to access that at the times when things are challenging. For example, if we're going for a walk and it's raining and it's cold, motivation might not serve you very well, but if you can become driven and attached to these emotions, that might be a lot more powerful and save you on those literally rainy days where you don't feel like doing exercise. Okay, with all that said, let's walk through how we would go about establishing our 2 easy, low logistical barrier to entry exercise habits, which would be either the 10-minute walk or the 10-minute mobility. Let's start with stage 1. This is the stage where we establish our cue or trigger. So for the walking example, a great idea would be to leave your walking shoes by your front door. For the mobility example, it would be to place your exercise mat exactly where you intend to do your mobility regime the night before. So you go to bed with the mat already set for the next morning. This is what's known as priming your environment, and it's a step you can take to stack the odds in your favor. Now we're on to stage 2. So what we're looking to see here is that you wake up in the morning, you see your shoes by the door, you put them on without having a chance to overthink or second guess yourself, and you just go right out for your walk. Likewise, with the mobility example, you see the mat well laid out in your living space, and you just go straight into the mobility regime without a chance to bail out. The last stage is the reward stage, and it's the most complicated stage because rewards can be both internal or external, and they can be both good for us or bad for us, depending on how much control we have over our habit setting. With our rational mind, we may say to ourselves that just having done some exercise should be an internal reward mechanism. But like I say, you have to broker a deal. So why not set up a nice reward for when you come back from your walk? For example, a lovely coffee or tea that you can think about on your walk. Likewise with the mobility regime, a nice drink to start the day with, having done and secured your 10 minutes of exercise would be a great reward. By the way, part of the principle of brokering a deal with yourself means that all of these variables are up for change. I've chosen walking and a mobility practice because the barrier to entry is very low, and I've chosen a warm drink like a tea or a coffee as a reward because they're very low and most people tend to like them, but they can be whatever you choose and whatever appeals to you. You probably also noticed that I suggested both new exercise habits be carried out first thing in the morning. Now this is just because it lowers the chances of anything external like demands on your time or logistical changes getting in the way of your new exercise regime. Next, to bolster our cue action reward method, we're going to use implementation intentions from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Implementation intentions create a self-regulatory strategy that can massively bolster our chances of successful goal completion. In this fantastic book, James Clear outlines one research study carried out in Great Britain that was directly looking at how to establish a healthy exercise habit. First, a sample of people who had all signaled that they were motivated to exercise was gathered, and they're segmented into 3 distinct segments. All in all, 248 people participated and were segmented into these 3 groups. Group 1 was the control group and were just asked to record how often they exercised. Group 2 were termed the motivation group and were not just asked to track how often they exercised, they were also educated and presented to about the potential health benefits of regular exercise. Finally, there was a third group, and they were given the same educational material, ensuring that they were just as motivated to exercise, but they were also asked to formulate a plan as to how they would go about executing their exercise ambitions. Specifically, each member of the third group was asked to complete the following sentence. Next week, I would do 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on day, at time, in place. So for example, next week, I will do 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on Wednesday at 3 o'clock in the gym. The results of the study are fascinating. In groups 1 and 2, 35 to 38% of people reported that they exercised at least once per week, whereas 91% of people in the third group reported exercising at least once per week, which is more than double that of the normal rate. Therefore, the study suggests that the simple act of writing down where and when you intend to do exercise can massively increase the chances of seeing it through. Fascinatingly, as a callback to what we've just discussed, the additional motivational materials seem to make no impact whatsoever on an individual's ability to carry out their exercise intentions. This means that the planning and strategy behind forming exercise habits makes all the difference. So in our example, we could say, right now, I will do 10 minutes walking tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. in my local area. I'd love to see you write in the comments what your sentence would be for your own exercise intentions right now. So those are two very effective strategies that you could use right now to help you establish your new exercise habits. I think an interesting way to look at this is that you have to appreciate that it starts off tough and that we are stacking the odds in our favor. We're doing this daily negotiation with ourselves to establish habits that from the outside or ostensibly might seem quite simple things to do, like going for a walk. Now, while the act of going for a walk is easy, it's the consistent habit that is the challenge. Over time, once you establish those habits, they will become second nature, just like brushing your teeth. And then you can start to stack habits on one another, and you'll entertain the idea of establishing a habit that isn't so intrinsically rewarding. For example, if you were to do some research into cold therapy, you might rationalize that having a cold shower a couple of times a week would be a good new health intervention. And whilst that's an unpleasant sensation, in time you would be able to supersede the apprehension you'd feel about a cold shower with the rational understanding of what it would do for your health. So this makes you a very powerful person. And once you get to that stage, any new habit, you just go back to the methodology, you are able to establish habits that are going to be unpleasant. And you no longer have to stack the odds in your favor, you just see through the process. At that point, you're unstoppable. Ultimately, over time, your productive habit set will shift your identity, develop character, and have the power to shape your life. Now that you understand how habits work, you can start the process of developing mastery, doubling down on the ones that serve you and eliminating the ones that don't. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like me to help take the guesswork out of your health and fitness pursuits, please visit my website and book your free consultation where we'll discuss my online personal training service.